Section I see as great in terms of the narrative, but hit and miss when it comes to the gameplay. We're once again not particularly focused on solving puzzles outright, but more focused on navigating our way upwards to escape. The story in this section completely fleshes out the background of Aperture Science, primarily done through the voice recordings delivered by Cave Johnson, voiced by J.K. Simmons.
Oh, in case you got covered in that repulsion gel, here's some advice the lab boys gave me. Do not get covered in the repulsion gel.
I don't know if I'm biased just because it's J.K. Simmons, but I think the storyline that ensues is one that's incredibly tight and easy to understand on the surface, but becomes infinitely more complex when paying close attention to your surroundings. Through these voice recordings, which progress forward in time as you elevate yourself up, we discover the sad fate of Aperture's founder, purchasing an abandoned salt mine in 1943, going into competition with Black Mesa and developing things like the blue repulsion gel, a weighted storage cube, and a 1500 megawatt super colliding superbine. These are all things we actually see as we progress, and I'll talk about those in a sec. As time went on, Cave Johnson was put under fire because of things like Aperture's financial instability, and also a number of missing astronauts, which were presumed dead due to testing.
You might know us as a vital participant in the 1968 Senate hearings on missing astronauts. And you've most likely used one of the many products we invented, that other people have somehow managed to steal from us. Black Mesa can eat my bankrupt. Right.
His ultimate downfall came with further experimentation with the gels, creating an orange propulsion gel and a white conversion gel. It was this conversion gel that was actually made up of minerals, an incredibly poisonous substance, which would eventually lead to Cave Johnson's health swiftly declining, with his last wish being that Aperture continues on, with his assistant Carolyn taking over his head.
Guess what? Roundup moon rocks are pure poison. I am deathly ill. Brain mapping. Artificial intelligence. We should have been working on it 30 years ago. I will say this, and I'm going to say it on tape so everybody hears it 100 times a day. If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her. Hell, put her in my computer, I don't care.
This story is interesting enough, being wonderfully delivered and excellently paced throughout this section. The revelations that come from this are quite substantial and also exciting. The slow reveal of Carolyn actually being GLaDOS' human form is set up to be so intriguing, with different pieces of the puzzle emerging over time. There's also tons of little lore tidbits hidden amongst it, which I'm sure many people have taken a deep dive, but is primarily the foundation and downfall of Aperture, which is the ultimate takeaway. As for the new mechanics which get introduced here, I think they're all excellent and expand on ideas which were merely hinted at previously. The gels clearly switch up the gameplay the most, having 3 separate types which have radically different effects. The blue one gives you an extra high jump, being used frequently to either reach a higher position or to gain even further momentum while bunny hopping from point to point. The orange one increases the speed of your movement, allowing you to propel yourself forward at a much higher speed. It can also be used alongside the blue gel to launch yourself forward and upwards. And finally, the white gel can be spread around any surface, which in turn will then mean you can now place a portal down, as long as the area is big enough. These are all introduced at a slow and manageable pace, primarily having you get to grips with the blue gel first, before then introducing the second 2 later on. There's particular details I really like in this section, which do carry across to the rest of the game, such as the frequently changing loading screens, used very effectively in this part to convey the different time periods of Aperture Science. This is also used unexpectedly later on, when we eventually end up back under Wheatley's control. There's also tons of details you can notice around the environment, some of which are in plain sight, and others which are hidden behind secret walls and passages, letting us discover more elements in relation to the game's lore, as well as getting a glimpse at who we can suspect is GLaDOS, or rather Carolyn. I will stand by the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of how these levels are laid out though. I've already mentioned the more open design actually ends up taking away from the puzzle solving gameplay, but funny enough, the design choice of having these large sections was apparently done to make the player more creative with their actions, and I simply don't understand this, as unlike in the normal test chambers where you can quite literally experiment with the entire room, there's very few surfaces you can actually place portals on here, making your path forward infinitely more obvious. And I'll also stand by the fact there's particular moments like this with the conversion gel which I really didn't like. I feel like there's too much ambiguity in how you're actually supposed to progress, which is something the normal chambers, despite not being too difficult, never had a problem with. This is quite clearly my opinion, so take it how you want. I just personally feel that a franchise like Portal thrives when working off its good mechanics, and not when it's just focused on progressing forward. And I mean, this example is the worst of the worst. We get a great puzzle using portals, gels, and momentum, but when we reach the end, we see some random conversion gel falling from a pipe. Now, it's not made at all clear where the actual exit is supposed to be, and looking around the area, there's several places which could plausibly be an exit, but are simply impossible to get to. The way you progress here isn't to connect all the pieces together to fling yourself into a new area, but instead, just look through this tight gap that the conversion gel's falling out of, and notice this tiny slither of white that you need to place your portal on. The solution was obvious, but was covered up by the environment, not creating a satisfying moment when I finally